Hello to my Gummy Knights and welcome back to the Echo Chamber. Now, getting back into what if Goku achieved the Ikari state. When we last left off, we had a miniature arc revolving around Gohan and his little bit of a rebellious streak, mainly depending around the fact that Goku was being more overly cautious with Gohan in this timeline around, and so Gohan was kind of set off to the side, and he felt rather despondent towards that type of treatment, but ultimately everyone ended up working it out, especially due to the fact that Chi-Chi and Piccolo ended up coming up with a plan in order to get Goku to basically acknowledge Gohan, mainly revolving around the fact that they were wondering who was going to be the fighters left on Earth, and so I think Gohan may be in that selection. But nevertheless, let's go on and get into this next part right now. So picking up exactly where we last left off, after the climactic battle between father and son, Gohan ends up being treated for his medical injuries, and ends up ultimately being nursed back to health. Of course, Goku is criticized by Chi-Chi for going a bit overboard, of which he apologizes for, essentially saying that he did not mean for it to go that far, but does indeed ultimately fully acknowledge Gohan's power and ability, and especially his potential, apologizing for being so neglectful of their son. Chi-Chi accepts this, of course, and they ultimately end up restoring the unification of their family. With that all being said and done, we continue on the arc proper, which means that we finish off the time skip in regards to the preparations of getting prepared to go to Namek, with ultimately nothing of note necessarily changing in regards to everyone's training. They're going to be training as usual, and those people who are on King Kai's planet are going to continue their training, and those people who are on Earth are going to continue their training. Mainly, really, that comes in the only notation regarding around that Goku and Piccolo are now on Earth, and they're completely involved in training Gohan, which fosters a better relationship between the entirety of the group, and that's where they spend essentially the remainder of their time. They also ended up even incorporating Yajirobe into that, another fighter who was selected to remain on Earth. The goal here ultimately trying to make both he and Gohan as strong as they possibly can be in order to deal with any problem that may rear its ugly head on Earth. And they are extremely successful within this endeavor, with both Yajirobe and Gohan growing tremendously in terms of power level, with both of them, that being Gohan at 10,000 and Yajirobe being at 12,000 respectively. And I know that some people may, criticize this in regards to it being such an evolution in terms of power, but you gotta remember that both Goku and Piccolo are significantly stronger here and would have a lot more experience in terms of training and abilities that they could pass on to these guys in order to be able to elevate them. And especially given the fact that with Goku having achieved the Ikari state, Gohan's potential is astronomically greater than what it would naturally be, even in canon. On top of that, he is also a hybrid, so if anything, I would be questioning the idea of why it did not make the power level higher, given the fact that they had several months of training, and especially not so much intense, but intense enough to where it would be noticeable because they did not know what they were going to face out there going up against Namek. And as for Yajirobe, in terms of the context of that, human fighters, especially when they have trained for any level of situation in Dragon Ball, as we have seen, have grown tremendously even in a few months. Come to think of it, if we actually remember, even though it was technically filler, the filler is indeed canon to the anime of Dragon Ball, so this would be just considered canon in regards to the context of the anime, but it can even apply to the manga and generally across the board. The Z fighters, within the span of about 6 months or so, were able to grow tremendously, so much that they surpassed even the Ginyu Force. So that way when the Ginyu Force died and we're trying to start stuff on King Kai's planet, Tien, Yamcha, even Chaozu were able to defeat them with pretty much no effort at all. Something that both Krillin, Gohan, and Vegeta while on Namek were struggling with before they got their power-ups. So we know that humans, even when they're having leisurely training while taking it somewhat seriously, can grow tremendously. So I don't think that Yajirobe's power level is exaggerated either, especially given who his training teachers are and who his training partners are. So I think that putting Gohan and Yajirobe at these levels is more than respectable enough given the situation that we're going for here. Nevertheless, the remaining time does indeed come and go, and Bulma and as well as her father do finish preparations with the ship, so that way the group can indeed go to Namek. Now Bulma will of course be going to Namek as well in this timeline because ultimately she is the pilot and she is the one who's going to be helping them with their navigation and stuff like that, because I just don't want to get anybody confused given the fact that we have a tremendous powerhouse of a team, and then people are going to be like, why is Bulma still included into this? She's not only the one that prepared the ship alongside her father, but she's also the one who knows how to navigate the ship. She knows everything for the ship in regards to that, so she is still a valued member of the team. And also they need her for other useful technologies that she can bring to the table in order to help. I just want to kind of like clarify that into why Bulma is going. I know that not a lot of people are going to be questioning it, but there may be some people who are out there wondering why I'm allowing Bulma to come here, especially when you got this other 4-man team consisting of Yamcha, Tien, Goku, and Piccolo, who are tremendously capable on their own, especially by this point of the story. The group ultimately says their goodbye with an especially tearful goodbye to both Gohan and Chi-Chi that Goku ends up giving out, essentially telling Gohan that he's the man of the house, you know, kind of giving that whole spiel that it's up to him, that he has a responsibility of now protecting the Earth, and Gohan essentially tells Goku he's not going to let him down. And with all the goodbyes said and done, the team ultimately ends up heading out towards Namek. And speaking of which, I kind of want to transition over to Namek, because since the group took the original time frame that Goku took in order to get to Namek, meaning that although our team from Earth is going to be arriving there in 6 days, there was already things that happened on Namek, given that the group had already been there for a few days. This would include notably Vegeta, and so I kind of want to go and transition over to Namek to tell you exactly how his story was going, considering that it's of vital importance due to the fact that, well, Krillin and Gohan aren't there. And so in regards to Vegeta, I would just go ahead and say that he would have somewhat less of a hindrance, but also would be in a lot more extreme danger, especially given the context of his fights. So, he ends up ultimately engaging with both Dodoria and Zarbon, for instance, as something of a notable change. Whereas Gohan and Krillin were there, Vegeta's not going to help out some random village that Frieza is destroying. He's essentially doing investigation and reconnaissance, going to get the Dragon Balls himself from other villages, and he is tracking their movements. But of course, due to that, and the fact that they were tracking him as well, Dodoria and Zarbon do ultimately ended up running into Vegeta. And whereas Vegeta handily deals with Dodoria because they're not going to fight as a unit, Dodoria was sent in first, obviously because they thought Vegeta was still at the same power level that he was when he was back on Earth. This was a sore mistake, and Dodoria is ultimately destroyed. Zarbon is getting beat up, of course, at first, but then he takes down Vegeta as he would naturally in canon. So that's one of the significant notable changes. But not only that, due to the fact that Vegeta is still such a significant nuisance, and with nobody hindering him, given the fact that he would now have more Dragon Balls, he becomes such a thorn in Frieza's side that Frieza actually ends up calling the Ginyu Force down earlier than what he does in canon. And here comes another significant change. Guru makes a play for desperation and ultimately ends up sending Nail, and Nail does adhere to this. So the people who we're going to see going up against the Ginyu Force this time around are going to be both Vegeta and Nail. They're going to be going up against the Ginyu Force when we see our team arrive. And in fact, this is actually somewhat of a blessing, given the fact that Nail is most likely at least stronger than both Goldo and Recoome, if not closer to Recoome's level, given the context of Recoome's power level in relation to Vegeta. Vegeta was at a power level of 33,000. I suggest that Recoome was more closer to around like that 40,000 range of power, and we know that Nail's at a power level of 42,000, so I think that Nail would at least be able to take on Recoome comfortably, if not be able to overpower him. And so with this in mind, Goldo is taken out pretty easily, and ultimately Recoome is taken out as well. Now, of course, Vegeta and Nail do get battered up because Recoome is a high level difficulty, but with both of them working, they're not as battered when they take on both Jace and Birder, at which point they absolutely get slammed. Jace and Birder are just too powerful. So Nail and Vegeta, although they're putting up a valiant fight, are ultimately being destroyed and wrecked in this endeavor, as they're no match for the tag team of the Red Magma and the Blue Hurricane. This ultimately ends up leading them both to a near-death state, with Nail taking the brunt of that, being more fatally injured than Vegeta was by the time that our group arrives. But of course, when our group arrives, it is an absolutely different story. Coming off the ship, fresh off the presses, they are looking like an ultimate unit of badassery. And this is mainly due to the fact that, just like in canon, because I know that some people may say, well, they probably aren't strong enough to take on the Ginyu Ginyu Force. But just like in canon, when Bulma and her father ended up ultimately working on the ship, they re-outfitted it and also included things like gravity training, especially based on the notion. I've already established this in other parts, but just in case somebody forgot, just go ahead and remind you that that would be something that still happened here. And so, when you got these amount of fighters, especially how many of these fighters know Kaioken, and the fact that both Goku and Piccolo are starting off extremely at a higher level, everyone here got immediately stack boosted when it comes to the gravity training, especially considering the fact that they all would have reached 100 times gravity, most likely even going beyond that before the time in which they arrived on Namek. And in fact, I'm not going to showcase the power levels on screen, just so you guys can indeed see exactly what I'm talking about in terms of how much monstrous growth this team has undergone since their time training to come to Namek. And as you can see, it's not even close in comparison to most of the fighters that you're going to be seeing during this portion of the saga. In fact, that's why, unlike with the original team dealing with both Gohan, Krillin, and Bulma, they're not going to be doing any running and hiding. And I know there's some people who like a lot of the strategy aspects of Dragon Ball, and don't get me wrong, I do too. But these guys are pretty much all Goku from canon and far surpass Goku's level where he was at when he arrived on Namek. So it's absolutely no contest for anybody. They're just going to essentially be like Goku. And like Goku they are, considering that once they suss out the situation, Tien is actually the one who jumps the gun, immediately going forward towards the battle. And right before a death blow ends up ultimately finishing off Vegeta, coming from none other than the Blue Hurricane himself. His kick is caught directly by the ankle via Tien's grip. And he's just staring daggers at this man. He's absolutely peering right through his soul. And Berta couldn't believe it. He was like, how can anyone be this fast? He's supposed to be the fastest in the universe. And that's when Tien utters the, of course, badass line that Goku said originally, at least as far as the English dub is concerned, the whole second fastest in the universe. Berta then snatches his leg away, trying to go for another attack, but Tien easily dodges that and gut checks him so hard he sends him flying up into the air and completely shatters through his armor, before jumping up into the air and then doing a hammer fist, knocking him back towards the ground. Berta was taken out pretty much immediately from that attack. The rest of the group ultimately arrives, and Jace, like in canon, just runs away, screaming for Captain Ginyu, like nobody's business, because he realizes that he's not about to take on any of these guys. Especially because in that assault alone, Tien's power registered at around a total of 80,000. Now, this is still Tien holding back, and Jace knew that he was absolutely cooked, and so just ran off to go get Captain Ginyu. This leaves Vegeta absolutely flabbergasted. He can't believe what he saw just now. There was no way Tien was able to do that. But Vegeta's stunned silence ultimately ended up having him drop his guard, in which case Goku touched his head and, using his telepathic powers, was able to read his mind in regards to the situation of everything going on up until that point, with Piccolo having gone over and done the same thing for Nail. And now that they were caught up on the story, Goku ultimately ended up handing Vegeta a senzu bean, despite telling him that he did not like his actions on the planet up until now, given the fact that he did read his mind and saw what he did to a lot of the Namekian villages. Now, whereas Goku is apprehensive about that, he does again ultimately give Vegeta a senzu bean. Nail, on the other hand, will not be so lucky, given that his injuries were far too fatal up until that point. But he does have a bit of a gift to pass on before he dies, and that is actually to fuse with Piccolo. So not only are we getting the fusion in an entirely different way, but we're actually getting it a lot earlier than what we would have. So Piccolo's monstrous strength is already astronomical, but it's going to skyrocket after this. And of course the fusion is then complete, and it's easily noticed by the rest of the group that Piccolo is a whole different beast. In fact, he's so unafraid that he immediately wants to go after the other high power level in the distance, sensing that it's Frieza. And nobody even really questions this, but a telepathic message does come over them in regards to Guru, speaking to them about everything else that is going on, and in relations to what the Dragon Balls are and what has happened in the Dragon Balls. And even though they're a bit worried by the fact that Frieza does have all the Dragon Balls in his possession, Guru lets him know that due to the fact that Frieza does not know the password, or in this case Namekian, he would not be able to actually use the Dragon Balls and will most likely be heading out soon in order to find out the so-called password or to find a Namekian still living who can activate the Dragon Balls for him. So this gives the group a chance, and they're all extremely ecstatic about this. Guru also informs the group that he had been reading their minds the entire time that they were talking, and after realizing the purity and sincerity of what they came here for regarding their wishes, Guru ultimately accepts to help them, letting them know that he's not long for this world, and that if they do want to make their wishes before he died, they should do it as quickly as possible, and that he'd be more than willing to help, saying that they would have to first go and retrieve the Dragon Balls and bring them to him. This is due to the fact that Guru himself is the last Namekian alive who can do anything in regards to helping them with the Dragon Balls, since Dende was ultimately killed back in the village. As if you guys remember in canon, not only was Cargo shot down, but Dende was about to get shot down by Dodoria. And with no Krillin and Gohan, and especially given the fact that Vegeta does not really care, Dende was ultimately killed too. And due to the fact that Nail was a warrior Namekian and thus not a part of the Dragon Clan, and so he couldn't use the Dragon Balls, this does make Guru the only one left who can summon up Purunga in order to help grant them their wishes. But on top of helping them with that, he also wants to impart onto them one last gift. And so he tells part of the group to come over there to them, whereas part of the group should go over there and get the Dragon Balls. With both Piccolo and Goku smiling, noting the ease of this, given the fact that they both have instant transmission. And so they begin to divide up the teams. Goku and Vegeta are heading over towards the Dragon Balls, whereas Piccolo, Tien, and Yamcha are going to be heading over towards Guru. And given the fact that Frieza is already on the move and heading in towards that direction, they think that this would be best, since Piccolo is indeed right now currently the strongest of the group, and that he would be their best chance in going ahead and holding off and even potentially taking out Frieza. So they want their strongest member already over there, because if Frieza does get to Guru before they do, bad things will happen. So with that, the groups do indeed separate, with Goku taking Vegeta and Piccolo taking the rest of the groups to their areas respectively. Instantly appearing in Guru's home is Team A, consisting of again Piccolo, Yamcha, and Tien. And Guru goes over what the gift was that he wanted to give them. And that, of course, is having their potentials unlocked. Piccolo declines this, however. Given everything that he's gone through, on top of having Kaioken and Nail, his confidence is getting to him a little bit, but it is somewhat justified. Again, they don't know the extent of Frieza's power, but Piccolo is really confident that he could do it, and thus declines the offer to have his potential unleashed. But the other two readily accept it, given the fact that they too felt Frieza's power and realized that they'd be more of a help rather than a hindrance to Piccolo if they did have the power boost, even if it was of a minuscule or marginal difference. However, lucky for them, it is not that. As we know, the power boost does indeed give you an overabundance of multiple times of an increase. Now, of course, this happens over time, but it is quite noticeable. And back at Frieza's ship, before Ginyu and Jace could even leave, Goku and Vegeta show up right then and there, with Goku pointing out the rather obvious that, hey, they just left the Dragon Balls hanging out. But of course, Ginyu does indeed stop, stumping back down, saying, nope, you guys are not going to be getting the Dragon Balls today, and that this is actually in his favor. He's glad that they showed up because he would hate to have to chase them down. And of course, Vegeta and Goku are just looking like, yeah, nah, this is going to be easy pickings. However, Ginyu's side does have the numbers on their side, given the fact that Vegeta did not show up earlier after Ginyu and Jace had already showed up to fight Goku. The Frieza soldiers are still alive, and so they end up joining, of course, on Team Ginyu, and it hopes to give them the numbers advantage, but this isn't really going to make a difference. And you guys will see how much of this is not going to make a difference in the next part. Alrighty guys, and that was the end right there. And so of course I want to address a quick point because I know people are going to be screaming at me like, hey, what happened to Bulma? I mean, is Bulma just not a part of the team anymore? No, she definitely is still a part of the team. It's just that, I'm gonna be honest with you guys, there's really no need for her to get involved at all, because even if she touches down in the same exact spot that Goku touches down, which, given that I'm trying to keep it close to not change any minutia of details, it doesn't really matter, because in canon they landed in an entirely different spot and were attacked by Frieza soldiers. Even if they still landed in that exact same spot, there would be no Frieza soldiers there to attack them, as that was days ago in terms of the timeline of when that happened to Krillin, Gohan, and Bulma originally. And Krillin and Gohan handled that pretty well. So even if they did show up, I mean, what are they going to do to the Z-Fires? The ship is not going to be destroyed or anything. And so essentially they grabbed the radar from Bulma, clicked it on, knew where the Dragon Balls were, and it was like done. It's like, Bulma, you stay here where it's safe and prepared for our way home, and we'll go and handle the situation. I don't think Bulma would have any complaints. Now, I know that in materials of canon and fillers, she ultimately did when they left her, but that was when Gohan and Krillin just left Bulma high and dry after already being gone and then coming back and not telling her what was going on. They didn't tell her anything that was happening. She can't sense energy, so she doesn't know who's fighting who's fighting where, and her technology doesn't allow her to scan the entire planet, and so that's why she got upset. But once Tien and all them felt the power levels of what was going on and they told Bulma just to hang back, Bulma listened. Okay, she's smart like that. She's not about to sit there and put herself in danger when she doesn't have to. So she listened to what they said. They said they'll handle it and they'll be back. She's just there for the ride home. No offense. She got them there and now they're doing their thing. So that's where Bulma was. I didn't forget about her. I just made it very clear that she was no longer a denomination inside of this. Irrespective of all of that, I hope you guys really did indeed enjoy this part. And I know it's been a while since I released a part to this What If, but we are back on the grind in terms of releasing the content. I do apologize for that. Had some stuff going on, and so that's why I'm ultimately late on that, but you guys don't want to hear those excuses. Like I said, we're back on the grind. We're going to be getting videos back out to you guys in regards to this part of the What If, especially because now we're in the pivotal Frieza saga. And I know that you guys think that that might have been shorter, but you got to keep in mind when Goku arrived. Okay, when Goku arrived, we had already pretty much had most of the arc done. We were getting to that halfway point. So it would be the same for our team here, considering they're taking his schedule. They're going to arrive. Now, I hope you guys did like my inclusion of Nail and Vegeta, because that's a team up that we pretty much never get to see. And even from the myriad of what ifs that I personally have seen, I don't think I've ever really seen that team up all that much. I can't even remember a what if where I've actually seen it at all, but there's gotta be a what if out there where some people have done that team up before where it's just Nail and Vegeta. But I figured I ultimately would have Nail join here, because in canon, I don't really like the excuse of not having Nail join. It just didn't really make a whole lot of sense to me, and so I think that Nail should have joined if he had the opportunity to join, especially given how much help it would have been to the Earthlings. And in this case, Vegeta, because Vegeta by himself is getting cooked. Without Gohan and Krillin there, and they didn't do much to help mitigate it, but without Gohan and Krillin there, Vegeta would have just been up a Schitt's Creek metaphor, not even metaphorically speaking. So hopefully I addressed everything that needed to be addressed here, and like I said, I do hope you guys enjoyed, and I will catch you in the next one. Peace. And to all my Gummy Knights, new and old, just remember, this is a man's world, but it would be nothing without his brain and his bronze, and lying is indeed the most fun that a woman can have without taking off her clothes. Good night.